speaker and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, I was perusing the blueprint for creating a more just and vibrant city for all.
Yeah, it's a good beach read. Yeah.
BLM Brandon's report. His blueprint, as he says, for Chicago. I was thinking about it because of that $1.8 billion settlement New York City just entered into with Black and Latino teachers.
Because they failed the test.
Because they failed the competency test, yeah.
Next time, study harder.
Payouts for people who failed the test are in the millions. Individual teachers, you're being compensated $2 million
For failing a test?
for failing a competency test. So you couldn't teach, or you couldn't teach anymore.
Only in America.
In Brandon Johnson's blueprint for creating a more just and vibrant city for all, he writes, throughout this report, there are references to marginalized, vulnerable, and special populations. Special. We recognize these groups are made vulnerable by our current socio-political structure and the way that interlocking systems of oppression produce structural violence that marginalizes their experiences. These conditions requires that those most impacted receive special consideration to ensure quality of life for all Chicagoans. We examine these experiences throughout this report, recognizing the margins as a place of power. Those most marginalized include, but are not limited to, people who identify within the LGBTQIA plus populations, older adults, disabled Chicagoans, people racialized as Black.
What does that mean?
Other racial and ethnic groups, people who only speak a language other than English, immigrant refugee groups, formerly incarcerated people, and people experiencing poverty. The only people who are not special are honkies working for a living. Got it.
That's a very long list you just read, Dan.
So based on that and the precedent set by New York City, New York City. I want the reparations by other means to begin in earnest, don't you? If, in case you're not moved, persuaded by that compelling rhetoric from the BLM Brandon blueprint, or by the $1.8 billion settlement by New York City, meet Herman Grimm, won't you? Herman Grimm was awarded $2 million in the case involving teachers who failed a basic skills test so they could be at the front of a classroom. Herman Grimm, $2 million.
What?
And they knew I wasn't taking them serious because I just wasn't taking them serious. You know, would you send me letters and tell me about lawsuit? Because I know a lawsuit either they go through or they won't go through. You know, from reading, hearing news, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I know a couple of people that had, well, not in education, but they went through lawsuits and they didn't win or anything like that. Mm. So to me, it's just like fabric. You know, either, you know, but it's when I finally got it in my head, they kept pushing and kept explaining things piece by piece until I started getting in my head and just listened to them, and it went from there.
Okay.
But still today, I don't really believe it. But, you know, and yesterday we stayed on the phone for a long time trying to convince me that it's real, it's no game, it's no, you know, fouls, falsehood, and all that stuff. But it's not. I'm a normal person. I had to struggle for money.
I'm not being rude, and I know people sometimes have speech impediments, but that now we can maybe understand why he failed the test.
No, he's a victim of a test that was culturally biased. Obviously, that's the only way he could have failed, and he's entitled to $2 million of other people's money.
He got $2 million. Wow.
You know who may have a case is the students in these school systems. Our friends over at wirepoints.org, they've reported on what $30,000 spent per student produces in the Chicago public school system, which is 80 out of 100 CPS students cannot read at grade level, do not read at grade level. It also means 89 of every 100 black students in CPS don't read at grade level. But it's worse than that because most of them are not even close to reading at grade level. So they looked at the actual scores on these assessment tests to figure out, is this a problem where you can get people up to speed if you took some evasive action or not? And the answer generally is not. Of the 89 students out of 100 who failed to meet grade level, the grade level threshold for reading, 21 were approaching grade level. They scored a 3. 21. So that's 11 at grade level and 21 approaching grade level. The other 68 students, 27 scored a 2 and 41 scored a 1, the lowest possible score. So 40% of black children in CPS are, what does that translate to and how many grades behind grade level their competency is? I don't know, but it's a long way. I mean, they're not close. 40%, 30 grand per year. 11% at grade level. 20% at grade level overall in a system of, they say, 300,000 kids. Let's say it's 250 and declining for obvious reasons. Maybe they have a case. Maybe the deprivation of access to a quality education, I could be convinced to support a class action lawsuit against Chicago Public Schools or New York City schools where choice is not available, and in fact it's opposed by these same institutions that are getting paid out millions of dollars because of their incompetence. For more on this, Steve Moore, economist, author of Govzilla, joins us. Steve, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Well, good morning, guys. I was just listening to your discussion about this. I had not heard about this. I mean, it makes me physically ill. I mean, really, you're going to put Herman Grimm in front of a classroom?
No, you're not. You're going to give him $2 million because he's not competent to be in front of a classroom.
Right. I mean, it is. And who are the victims of this progressive lunacy? It is those children in the classroom who are being denied. I've always been in favor of paying great teachers more money. I think great teachers are truly worth their weight in gold. The problem is that these public schools are filled with incompetent teachers that are also getting just as much as the ones who are fantastic and do their job and prepare our kids for life. But this is unbelievable that these teachers that can't pass a basic – how can someone who can't pass a test teach a subject? Is this lunacy?
Well, they've been marginalized, and they're interlocking systems of oppression and so forth. Yeah.
But okay, sure. Even if that were true, I mean, even if that were true, so you're going to put you're going to put that incompetent person in front of a classroom, and who are the people who are going to be,
the victimized are the kids.
The kids, of course, and it's putting kids last, and this is why this whole idea of everybody's a victim and everybody needs to be. I mean, the same thing in Philadelphia. I was looking at the scores there. The average SAT score for the average teacher in the Philadelphia school system is like way, way, way below what the average school is for the average kid going into college. So we should have the best and the most talented people teaching our kids, not the most incompetent. What was that old line, that Bill Murray used, that people can't teach or can't teach, and people can't teach PE. I mean, it's really gotten to that point where the dumbest people are the people who are teaching. And again, I remember, I don't know about you, Amy, I remember there were 4 or 5 teachers in my, when I was growing up that made a huge difference in my life.
Oh, you still know their names. Miss Simberoff, Miss Dandalis.
I remember her. She's a great teacher, and Howard Dickman, who was my, history teacher, who loved American history, and I got so into. I mean, he inspired me and so many other people. Those are the kind of people, folks, we need to have in front of the classroom. Not people. Oh, he's a victim. She has to teach because she's a LGBTQ, and he's got to teach because he's Asian. And come on. I mean, really, this is craziness.
Well, doesn't that speak to? I know this is fundamentally a state and local issue, but I mean, in terms of vision, it's a national issue, and that is school choice, which is where you're getting
Of
to.
course.
And
Of course.
and there's limited things you can do at the federal level, but it seems to me the Republican Party, whether you're running for federal or state and local offices next cycle, that school choice needs to be central, and particularly in swing states where you have Democrats that are the modern day Orville Faubuses at the schoolhouse door, like Cooper in North Carolina and Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Pritzker in Illinois. Those are in swing states, but
Well,
Evers in Wisconsin. Seems like there's a real opportunity there.
Yeah. So I want to make sure, thank you for mentioning it, that people go to Committee to Unleash Prosperity website and see our ad that we're running around the country, which basically, I think you've probably seen it, Dan and Amy, where the opening scene of that ad is George Wallace exactly 60 years ago this summer, infamously standing in front of the school doors in Alabama, saying segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever, and not letting the black children in the better schools. That's exactly, folks, what Democrats are doing today. They're saying, no, black children and Hispanic children and low-income children, they have to go to awful schools. We're not going to give them an alternative. Only, rich white parents who have the opportunity to opt out of the public schools are going to get a great education. But, you should see this ad, folks. It is hard-hitting. And incidentally, all these people that you just mentioned, the governor of Shapiro of Pennsylvania, the governor of Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, all these people who oppose school choice, guess where they went to school themselves or where they sent their kids to school?
Right.
Oh, right.
Of course.
It's the hypocrisy.
They're the biggest hypocrites I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's similar to what happened during COVID.
Something else, something else too on this. Since Unleash Prosperity, you mentioned Unleash Prosperity. We talked about this yesterday, but I wanted you to address it too. I thought it was really interesting the graph you did of 0 to 4 age populations and what's happened to them over the last 2 years, state by state, because it tells you where young couples are choosing to live and raise a family, and surprise, surprise, it's not in states like Illinois.
Yeah, this is a big, big story. I call it "Where Have All the Children Gone?" And so, if you look, by the way, our birth rates are way down in the United States, all over the country, and it's a real demographic crisis that's going on in this country. But the crisis is worst in the blue states. Illinois is losing the percentage of the population that's below the age of 6. That percentage keeps dropping. Same thing with New York. Same thing with California. Same thing with Connecticut. Gee, what do all those states have in common? Oh yeah, they're blue states run with the Democratic policies. Meanwhile, what the youngest states and the states that do have a lot of children? Oh, let's say Utah, Florida. Even though Florida has a lot of retirees, it has a lot of kids. Now, the question is, why is that happening? Why are the red states parents having kids and the blue state parents aren't? And I'm going to hypothesize, because I don't know if I know exactly the answer. But one is what we just talked about: crappy schools in blue states. Who wants to rear your kids in a state that has or city that has lousy schools? A second one is climate change. The craziness of these. They're teaching these people, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. In 30 years, the earth is going to blow up if we don't do something like that. Well, who wants to have a kid if the world isn't even going to exist in 30 years? So
right. Well, that's why 53% of the people polled said they're not expanding their families because of climate change. It's their way of helping the world. But also with this heat wave too. No, this heat wave in 1974. There was, I think, a string of 12 days in Arizona.
Yes.
That were. I lived in Tucson.
Yeah.
I was a reporter. In 1991, it was 118 degrees, and the next day it was 115. This just happens every 7 or 6 years. But,
I have, look, Dan and Amy, I have to correct you. Before this summer, there were never any heat waves. Don't you understand that?
I know.
I mean, now, by the way, if you go back to the Great Depression, look at a chart on heat waves. In fact, Dan, I'm going to put it in the hotline tomorrow. I want you to, alert your listeners to this. The biggest heat wave in American history was in the 1930s. And guess what? 90% of the carbon in the atmosphere hadn't even been emitted. So how could you have such hot weather before there was a carbon problem?
Well, that's a good
point.
question. I'm gonna have to defer to socialist Spice Girl Ilhan Omar on this. She tweeted out, "The Earth just broke the record for the hottest day in 120,000 years. In fact, we broke it on 3 separate days. National climate emergency now." She's unaware of the fact that we haven't been able to measure temperatures. We don't have records of temperatures going back 120,000 years. But
these people, I mean, yeah, exactly. They had, we're talking about 90,000 years before the year of Christ was born.
I mean, talk about BC, huh? We got big BC on crack.
It's even worse than you thought.
Wow, that is. I mean, did she delete that?
No, but I mean,
eventually?
Don't you think they would think, boy, I'm going to not say this. This is so crazy. It's not going to do my cause very well. Oh yeah, they had temperature monitors back, before they had the wheel.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. There were the hockey stick was in play back before Fred Flintstone. Sure, it was.
Now I can tell you definitively, in the year 75,000 BC, there was a big heat wave, and she's not taking account of that.
Yeah, and we just eclipsed it. She knows about it, and we just eclipsed it. Pun intended. Yeah, this is what you're dealing with. It's difficult to have a serious conversation with these people.
There you go.
Steve Moore, economist, author of Govzilla. Steve, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys. Have a great week. You made my morning. I just can't stop laughing. Take care.
Anything
Bye.
to make you happy. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago.